はい。洋ヶ島の名物よ。名物？海洋類入りペンネゴルゴンゾーラ。
Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Anime with Alvin, where this time we're going to be making the Sea King pasta from One Piece. Now, in the show, Luffy is presented with a dish that is called penne gorgonzola. Now, in One Piece, Sea Kings are huge carnivorous monsters that usually inhabit a lot of the world's oceans. But while looking for a Sea King alternative in real life, we stumbled upon the Monkfish, which is what you see here. This creature that we have is also known as a sea devil in certain parts of the world, which I think is a very fitting thing. Now, this kind of fish is not easy to acquire. It took us a good amount of effort and time to be able to get the fish that you see here. Now, this is just the head, and we're going to explain why and take you guys on our adventure.
I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this episode and supporting the BCU from the very beginning. I'm excited to announce my new website, babi.sh, or as I like to call it, babby.sh. The ultimate destination for all things BCU. There's all the recipes from my videos, exclusive new recipes. You can search by genre or ingredient. You can even toggle between US and metric and scale the serving size. We heard your feedback about everything you wanted from the site, so that's what we did. You can get 10% off your first Squarespace order by visiting squarespace.com/babish.
It is 2 a.m. We are at the Fulton Fish Market in the Bronx in New York, and we are here because we are trying to source a live monkfish for our One Piece pasta video.
There are so many different kinds of seafood, from bushels of mussels and oysters just everywhere. I thought those were sacks of potatoes, but no, this was all seafood. There were crates and crates and crates of different kinds of fresh seafood, frozen seafood. There were fishmongers both selling and preparing and filleting lots of different fish. There's this guy that was cutting tuna, some guy that was cutting a huge swordfish, and all just trying to display their wares to get their fish as sold quickly as possible. We had trouble finding the monkfish visually, so we asked around a couple vendors to see if they had any, and they kind of pointed us into another vendor's direction. And once we had one, they said, well, they don't sell the actual whole entire monkfish, they sell the tail. Because of its intense appearance, a lot of customers don't want to buy that kind of fish. So the typical meta is to now remove the head from the tail, sell the tail as it contains a lot of the meat, and see if you can find someone that sells the head. Yeah, we found the guy that sells the head. This thing is pretty intense and it is huge, but the head is like 60% of the whole body of the fish. So luckily, this kind man was able to sell us both the head and the tail separately, but together. All in all, we weighed this up and paid about 40 bucks for this. They had a really cool paper system where they just gave you a number, you hand it over to a guy in a little closed off booth, you pay them, and they give you your fish. Alright, we are now back into the studio, and I gave this guy a little bit of a crown because he is going to be our Sea King for today. I'm going to give you guys a warning here. This part is going to get pretty graphic, as I do need to butcher and take the meat off of this fish. So if you were easily squeamish, I suggest you skipped a little bit forward to where we get the meat already. Alright, fair warning, here we go. So first I'm going to handle the head. Now the head really doesn't have a lot of meat, but there are two pockets of meat on this fish which are harvestable. The cheeks, the fish cheeks, which are really good. So the cheeks are located under the eyes. In order to access the cheeks, I do need to be able to peel back the skin, which is a very thick and tough skin that definitely should not be eaten or cooked. So after kind of getting in here and removing a lot of the skin, trying to ignore how weird this looks, I'm able to find those pockets of flesh that are the cheeks. Pretty simple, but because it is my first time, definitely try to take more time to ensure the highest amount of meat harvested from this fish. Alright, now that the cheeks are set aside, I've examined the head. There's really not a lot of meat that I think you could use in here, so we're gonna just, put that to the side and go ahead and prepare the tail, which does have the bulk of the meat. First, you do need to de-skin, take off all of that, because again, it is tough and inedible, so using a knife, trying to get under that and butchering it similarly to how you might try to peel silver skin off of a brisket. I'm applying the same technique to get the fish away from the skin. Also, any of the dark red spots do need to be cut off because that's where all the bloodline might have ingrained into the meat, and that's going to affect the flavor of the flesh, so I'm going to try to trim it off to leave as little red as possible. Kind of where if you see someone butchering tuna, they carve off those really dark spots. And I'm no fish butcher, so I definitely could have done this a lot better. But I will say though, after getting the fillets off, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It was actually quite satisfying to slip the knife under, follow the backbone, and see it come off in one solid piece. And I will say I did my best to make sure as much of the flesh came off as possible. Here are the two cheeks that we have harvested, and here are the chunks of the tail meat that we have gotten from one whole monkfish. So initially we're thinking of doing eel for our Sea King meat, but instead we're switching to monkfish. However, the eel preparation we were thinking of is kind of similar to unagi in Japan. I think monkfish still has that nice meaty texture, so so we're gonna go with a very similar glaze here. I'm gonna go ahead and reference the unagi sauce recipe from Just One cookbook. First, in a small saucepan, I'm gonna combine a 1/4 cup of sake with 3/4 of a cup of mirin. Let that boil off and simmer until the alcohol has evaporated a little bit. Now, I'm gonna add in 3/4 cup of soy sauce and 1/2 cup of sugar and cook this until it is reduced into a sticky glaze because we want this to coat our fish very nicely. Once that's done, that is going to be set aside. Now in the show, it is said that this is a penne gorgonzola, so I'm thinking it could be like a gorgonzola cream sauce. First, I'm going to dice up an onion and 2 garlic cloves. Once those are ready, I'm gonna go ahead and cut up some gorgonzola cheese, about 1 pound or so. Now this stuff is pretty strong, so we try to get the more mild one. The most interesting part is that this dish clearly combines pasta, seafood, and cheese. 3 things that usually are not described to be in the same dish, but hey, we'll try to make it work. So, in a pan goes in some olive oil. I'm gonna saute the onion and the garlic until they have turned a little bit brown, not super brown. Now in the reference photo in the show, there seems to be a slight pink or red hue to the pasta, which means there might be a touch of tomato sauce just in the pasta cream itself. So I'm just gonna add a tablespoon of tomato paste just to cook that down as well. Then I'm going to add in my liquids, which is going to be 4 cups of heavy cream and our 8 ounces of gorgonzola. Stir that together until everybody is looking pretty good. The sauce has started to simmer, and now I'm going to go ahead and immersion blend that so all the onions and garlic can combine with the cheese. And after tasting this, I think this does need a pretty good bump of acidity because the gorgonzola is really strong. So I'm taking this juice of 1 whole lemon as well as the zest and adding that in as well. Now the sauce is a little bit brighter and not just super strong with the cheese. Once our sauce is ready, that is going to get set aside. So monkfish is actually a really firm flesh-like texture. People call it the poor man's lobster, and I can kind of see why. Make sure that a little bit of oil is in the pan. You're gonna sear these kind of how you would sear scallops. A little bit of stickage here, that's okay. We're just gonna try to get these pieces cooked and they will be glazed anyways. I'm cooking these in 2 batches so that way I don't steam up the whole pan because I do want at least a little bit of color, hopefully some crisp on these pieces of fish. And once both batches of our monkfish is ready, I'm gonna go ahead and throw in our glaze. Now goes the rest of the monkfish and let that simmer and bubble for a bit. Now the glaze is pulling a lot of water out of the monkfish and kind of making this a little wetter than I thought. So what I'm going to do is scoop out the slightly glazed monkfish onto a sieve to let some of the juices drain, pour those juices back into the pan and reduce this glaze almost down into a very sticky caramel-like situation, like a soy caramel. Now it's looking a little bit better. So once I add our monkfish back in, the color has changed. It's a lot deeper, stickier, shinier, more of that glazed fish look that I really want in this dish. Alright, now these are looking really delicious. It's time to assemble. In the spirit of using as much of that monkfish as we can, I did save the tail that we were able to take the meat off of, and I'm going to throw that in a pot of boiling water to boil almost into a slight light fish stock. And then we're going to cook our pasta in that water instead of regular water, because that will hopefully impart a little bit of flavor to the pasta and use up as much of the fish as possible. Once it's at a boil, I'm going to throw the pasta right in. And we're going to use a pasta shape called conciglione, which is a really large shell-shaped pasta. This is going to get cooked according to packet instructions, minus 2 minutes to reach a nice al dente. Now we're going to take our pasta out of the water and into a saucepan with some of our cheese sauce, making sure that's cooked, nice and reduced. And what's funny here is that these shells are so big that every time they hit the pan, a little bit of that fish stock is actually inside those shells and comes out. So this pasta is perfectly self-sauced. Okay, I'm going to plate these up into a little serving dish once it's ready, making sure that the shell side is facing up like they do in the show. Then I'm going to carefully place some of those glazed monkfish chunks on top, and well, there you have it. That's our version of the penne gorgonzola with sea king meat from One Piece. This should be interesting. Now this is actually really good, but I do like how the cheese flavors actually go quite well with your unagi style flavors. But to harmonize this, I think I want to add a little bit of vinegar. It does have a little bit of acidity missing, so I'm going to give this a splash of red wine vinegar, and whoa, now that is something special. That vinegar almost creates a nice little bridge between those strong seafood, soy, sugar, and cheesy flavors. I thought it was delicious. And wait, oh, we found some balsamic vinegar, even better. Now adding this, the balsamic seems to be the missing link. When you have it all together, everything suddenly becomes so much more cohesive. This dish with the balsamic vinegar turned from something that was good to something that was crave-worthy, as noted by everybody that was in the studio that came to try a bite. They were pleasantly surprised by the profiles that seemingly were going to be not very good together, but after trying a bite, well, let's just say none of the pasta was left that day.
Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. From websites to online stores to domains to analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for you to build your online presence. All of my websites over the years have been with Squarespace, and I'm excited to share the new one, babi.sh. We were able to use Squarespace's website builder and custom integrations to create a site that provides a powerful cooking experience. If you want to try Squarespace for yourself, you can start your free trial today by visiting squarespace.com/babish to get 10% off your first purchase.